You got some blood drops on your shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Nothing on you?
No.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is the right one.
Can I open the zipper?
Yeah.
Just checking there. Thank you. Just wanna...
In Everett, Washington, a welfare check quickly turned into a troubling investigation when police arrived at a sober living facility to speak with 27-year-old Janet Garcia. Her 4-year-old son, Ariel, had been reported missing by Janet's mother, who claimed she found blood inside Janet's apartment. As officers began questioning Janet, they immediately noticed she looked disoriented, almost as if she had recently cut her own hair in a moment of distress. While they checked her pockets and belongings, one officer pointed out small drops of blood on her shoes. Janet quickly claimed the blood came from her son, insisting he had simply fallen earlier in the day. She said she had taken him to the doctor and that everything was fine. Janet went on to explain that she hadn't been staying at home due to problems with her parents. She said she'd been moving between different houses and needed someone to watch her son while she recovered, admitting she struggled with alcohol. She claimed that after the supposed fall, she left her son with a woman she described as a longtime friend, but when asked for details, her story began falling apart. She could only give the woman's first name Alica or Alicabone, but couldn't provide an address, phone number, or even explain clearly how she contacted her. Officers pressed for basic information: where the friend lived, how Janet got there, and where her own car was. Janet's answers grew increasingly inconsistent. She first said she found the woman's number on an old Facebook account she no longer had. She then claimed she drove her son from Everett to Seattle, left her car at the friend's home, and took a bus back. She said the drive took 2 hours. Though the timeline didn't make sense, every detail she gave raised more questions than answers. Through the entire exchange, police attempted to remain calm, focusing on one priority: locating Janet's missing 4-year-old son and verifying whether he was safe. But with no address, no contact information, and a story full of contradictions, it became increasingly clear that something was very wrong. Investigators continued pressing Janet for details, trying to trace the route she claimed to have taken. When they asked her which exit she used, she simply said she didn't know. By this point, the truth was already catching up to her. According to later reports, FBI investigators located little Ariel's body the very next day. He had been wrapped in a Christmas blanket and left on the side of a highway, his location discovered after authorities tracked Janet's movements through her cell phone data. An autopsy would later reveal a horrifying reality: the 4-year-old had been stabbed as many as 41 times before dying from what was described as homicidal violence. To make matters even more tragic, Ariel's grandmother had reportedly filed for full guardianship just 2 days before he vanished. Hours before the police interview, surveillance cameras captured a crucial moment. Janet's vehicle was seen pulling into a parking spot near the group home. A few minutes later, she stepped out of the car, casually walking away, allegedly after abandoning her vehicle following the dumping of her son's body. She then made her way toward the sober living facility, where officers would soon question her. Back inside the building, Janet continued trying to stay calm as detectives gently walked her through her story again. They summarized her claims. She went from Everett to the hospital, got her son checked, drove to her friend's home in SeaTac, left her car there, left her son there, and then took a bus back. Janet nodded along, insisting all of this happened the same day. When officers commented on how expensive a SeaTac bus ticket must be, she insisted it only cost around $30. As the questioning went on, one officer tried to approach her with empathy. He repeated her own words back to her: how she loved her son, how she was upset about the custody issues with her mother, how difficult the situation must be. Then he gently pointed out the obvious. No mother who loves her child would hand him to a stranger and walk away without knowing where he is. Janet quietly agreed, so the officer asked again, "Where is he?" Janet said she knew where he was, but she didn't have an address. She didn't know how to help anyone find him. She hadn't taken down the friend's phone number. There was no contact method, no way to reach the woman she claimed had her son. When officers asked if she at least put the address into her phone, she said she hadn't. They reminded her that she loves her son and would know where he is. Janet insisted she did know yet still offered no real information. The investigators continued trying to ground her story. They repeated the friend's name Alika, but Janet corrected them, reminding them she was Janet, not Alika. The confusion only deepened the sense that her account was unraveling. Eventually, she scribbled down an address, but officers immediately noticed something was off. When they asked where she got it from, Janet admitted she simply came up with it from the top of her head. Still, she insisted this was the place she remembered leaving her son. She then added that if police couldn't find Ariel, she would be staying at the facility for the next 12 months. She explained that she had argued with her parents, wasn't speaking to them, and had nowhere else to go. When asked how she planned to communicate with the friend who supposedly had her child, Janet casually said she wouldn't be using her phone at all while she stayed there. Detectives shifted the conversation back to the alleged injury she claimed her son suffered. They tried to understand what Janet meant when she said there had been quite a bit of blood. She told them he had jumped off the bed they were sleeping on and hit the ground, causing his head to bleed. She claimed she took him to the doctor afterward and said he was doing good. When they asked which part of his head was hurt, she said she didn't remember exactly, but mentioned her own head was starting to hurt a little, drifting away from the topic. Throughout the interview, officers patiently tried to piece together a story filled with contradictions, missing details, and outright impossibilities. And as the hours passed, the grim truth was already waiting to be discovered by investigators miles away on the side of a cold Washington highway. Wrapped in a blanket meant for Christmas, lay the heartbreaking fate of 4-year-old Ariel Garcia. As detectives continued their questioning, they gently tried to anchor Janet's story in time. She claimed the incident happened early around 10 or 11 that morning. When they pointed out that it was now nearly 7 in the evening, she didn't seem to recognize how much time had passed. She insisted they weren't at the hospital long and even admitted her son never actually got checked by a doctor. She said she walked in, checked him in at the front desk, waited briefly, then decided the line was too long and simply left. Whenever investigators asked for specifics, what the hospital looked like, where she parked, what entrance she used, Janet's answers floated somewhere between vague and evasive. She didn't remember whether she parked in a garage or a lot. She didn't recall what road the hospital was on. She said she had never been there before, yet when asked to describe the inside, she offered little more than just the hospital. She did remember a front desk, but not whether she wrote anything or signed anything. When officers asked how crowded it was, she explained that she left because too many people were waiting. They also pressed her again about her son's supposed injury. She said he had jumped off a bed, hit his head, bled a little, and cried. No vomiting, no severe symptoms, nothing requiring stitches. She claimed the injury was on the side of his head, then shifted, pointing toward the front, just above the eyebrow. Her details changed slightly each time, but her tone remained flat and detached. Officers continued trying to follow her timeline. If she left the hospital around 10 or 11 in the morning, and it took her 2 hours to drive to her friend's home in SeaTac, it would place them there around midday. Janet confirmed the timing, but offered no clarity on the route or the exit she used. Even simple questions, how long she stayed at the hospital, what she did next, were met with short, uncertain answers. The detectives finally circled back to the friend she claimed had her son. Janet insisted she found the woman's information through an old Facebook account. She said she retrieved her number, called her from the phone in her purse, and drove to her house to drop off her child. When pressed about the call, she said she might have erased the number already, but added that the contact showed California, despite her previously saying the woman lived near Seattle. Nothing in her story aligned, not the hospital visit, not the injury, not the timeline, not the mysterious friend whose address she couldn't provide. Every detail seemed to dissolve the moment it was questioned. And yet, she spoke as if every part of her account was perfectly reasonable. A sudden head injury, a rushed hospital trip she couldn't describe, a long drive she couldn't retrace, a friend she couldn't identify, and a child she insisted was safe even, though she couldn't point to a single way for anyone to find him. As the interview continued, the investigators' patience remained steady, but the truth behind Janet's words was growing increasingly impossible to deny. Investigators continued trying to unravel Janet's story, but every answer she gave only deepened the confusion. When asked about the woman she supposedly left her son with, Janet offered a phone number, but quickly added that she didn't think the woman would answer. She couldn't explain why, only repeating that she wasn't sure the woman was still going to be there. She claimed she hadn't sent any text messages, and detectives noted that nothing about her behavior matched the urgency of a mother whose child was supposedly with a stranger after a head injury. The officers pressed on, asking what her little boy had been wearing that morning. Janet said he was dressed in blue pajamas, something with Winnie the Pooh. She thought, though, the details shifted as easily as the rest of her story. One officer stepped aside to pass the description and the phone number along to the team searching for the child. While waiting, they noticed Janet messaging someone on her phone. She casually explained it was her sister, who she said lived in Pasadena and might fly out to see her. The conversation felt strangely light, almost cheerful for someone supposedly worried about her missing child. Detectives took note of the small blood specks on her shirt and the dried stains on her shoes. Combined with her inconsistent story, her flat affect, and her wandering attention, the officers quietly agreed it was time to take her to the station. As they guided her toward the patrol car, Janet finally asked a question, one that made the detectives pause. She wondered aloud what would happen if they couldn't find her son. They explained that the sooner they located him, the sooner everything could move forward, and since she claimed to know exactly where she left him, finding him shouldn't be an issue. But her nervous rambling continued, undermining her own words. Because it was raining and her shivering had become noticeable, the officers suggested moving to a local precinct nearby, where she could sit somewhere warm and dry. She agreed on the condition she get a coffee first. They assured her the precinct had plenty. After securing her and placing her purse out of reach, they drove her away from the scene under the pretense of comfort, all while keeping a close eye on her increasingly erratic behavior. Not long after, another officer spoke with witnesses who had seen Janet earlier that day. Their accounts painted a disturbing picture. They described her as out of it, as if she were in some kind of shock. One mentioned her dramatically changed appearance. Her long dark hair was gone, chopped off in a sudden, uncharacteristic style. She had told them her mother was desperately looking for her son and had found blood at her home. Meanwhile, Janet had casually claimed the boy was with her mother, even though the mother was calling around trying to find him. The witnesses said that the Janet they knew years ago had been outgoing, loud, bubbly, and always laughing. But the woman they saw that afternoon around 2 o'clock was quiet, withdrawn, with her hands buried in her pockets, speaking to no one, and behaving like a stranger to herself. Piece by piece, everything the officers heard outside the interview room only confirmed what they had been sensing inside it. Janet's story didn't add up. And whatever had happened to her young son, it was becoming painfully clear that she was the only one who truly knew the truth. Another witness later explained that someone from the sheriff's office had come earlier to perform a wellness check on Janet before leaving the area. When the property owner arrived with her brother, they immediately wondered why Janet was there. As they confronted her, Janet's mother called, desperately asking if Janet and her son were with them. Janet insisted her son was with her mother, but her mother, crying and in complete panic, said he wasn't. No one knew where the boy was. The witness confirmed that Janet had 2 children, and as far as they knew, the other child was indeed with her mother. The real concern began when Janet's mother visited Janet's apartment and found blood inside. That discovery is what triggered the entire investigation. Ultimately, Janet was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the stabbing death of her 4-year-old son. According to court records, she has since been declared competent to stand trial. As of the latest update, Janet is scheduled to return to court this summer, where she faces the possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison. Thank you for watching. If you found this case disturbing, eye-opening, or important to talk about, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more real stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.